G'day and welcome to Aussievision. It's Kyriakos here. Today we speak to one of the 10 artists revealed for Eurovision Australia Decides 2022. Hailing from Perth, Western Australia, this band will represent the unique 80s infused progressive rock sound to the Australia Decides stage on the Gold Coast. And it's Danny joining us today from Voyager. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure, and I'm really excited to be speaking to you.
So huge congratulations on being selected for Australia Decides 2022. What was the first reaction you had when you found out that you had been selected?
Disbelief, denial, grief. No, grief wasn't in there. One of those stages. Most of those stages were not in there. It just went straight to, I think it took a while for me to digest what was actually going to happen, because you go, oh, cool. And then you go, oh, wow, this is going to happen. You start imagining yourself on the stage and all that sort of stuff. And then gradually that excitement builds up where you're just like, oh my God. So that's kind of where I got to in the space of probably about 10 minutes after getting the call from our manager that we're in. So yeah, that was that.
Now, there are 5 of you in the band, Danny, and you're the lead vocalist and you play the guitar. Can you tell us a bit about the guitar and how long have you been playing it for?
Look, I started off with piano and violin, classically trained, all that sort of stuff. And then at once, I used to play 2 keyboards on stage like this, like in a stack, which was really unbecoming because, you couldn't see me and I was singing. It was a nightmare. So then one day, probably about 10, 15 years ago, my friends, I think it was a particular birthday, they chipped in and got me a red Keytar that they'd ordered. And then I just had to use it and it just became a thing. And it's such an iconic instrument. Really, there's one here, that's the white version. Yep. It's really quite plasticky and not that exciting if you think about it conceptually, but as soon as you hold it like a guitar, suddenly it becomes more cool. Not as cool as the guitar itself, but it just becomes this thing that you've just got to kind of go, yeah, and people go, yeah. It's just awesome. And it's so 80s and it goes with our sort of 80s electro pop type sound. So why not?
Now, you'll be the first act to release the Australia Decides 2022 entry. You beat Jude York by day. We got a snippet of your Australia Decides entry, Dreamer, last night. And by the time this interview is out, the song would have been released. So if you're listening and watching this interview right now, go and stream and download Dreamer. What can you tell us about your entry?
So the song Dreamer is very much a mixture of all the things that I think Voyager does best. And it was a challenge to condense it all into 3 minutes. That's that songwriting process. You got to start shaving, metal and prog, they're generally got to go, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. Some of the more extreme prog bands are like 10 minutes. Nobody wants to hear that. That's too long. So really putting all the best elements in there. And it's got the electronica, it's got the 80s pop synth, it's got a catchy chorus, and of course it's got big, heavy metal guitars, because who doesn't love that? Yeah. So they're all the kinds of things that we wanted to put in there. But to be honest, the song wasn't really written for Eurovision at all. It was produced to fit within Eurovision when we found out it has to be 3 minutes, but It was written very much as an organic sort of natural Voyager song, like a lot of them do, start like an electronic type number, and then it just, heavy guitars get put into it, and it's made into more of a metal song. So I'm really excited about it. I think it's really catchy. I think it's really cool. It's got ups and downs and lows and left turns and right turns. So it's, I think with the right light show, it's going to be epic.
How did the song come about itself?
So it all starts with me and the keyboards with just a bit of noodling, and it's like a bit of okay, cool, that's cool. And then you sort of start to develop the melodies around that. Melody is the most important part. And I think that's why I think a lot of people have always gone, hey, you guys would do really well on Eurovision, because it's all about the melody, really. So that's really the focus point of all songwriting. And lyrics, to be honest, are secondary, but they are also important. The lyrics have got to fit the melody. That's the most important part. So lyrically, it's positive and it's negative at the same time. You've got sort of your lockdown aspirations of the grass is greener, but at the same time realizing, hey, what we have around ourselves now is actually pretty good too. So a lot of those themes are explored in there. So it's not really a lockdown song, but it kind of is, and we're not through this pandemic just yet. So there's a bit of that angst and that tension in there as well.
Now, with the music video, there is a snippet out at the moment, but it's going to be out tomorrow. I'm very intrigued from what I've been able to see. So there's moving lights and there's that beautiful electronica style aesthetics. What can you tell us about the direction for the music video and the lighting?
Yeah, so we wanted to make sure that with the video, we very much captured what a Voyager performance would be, and complement that with the lighting. There's a wonderful venue here in Perth called Magnet House, and they've got this amazing sort of moving roof with like billions of LEDs in there. So that worked really well because the song has got that sort of electronic, kind of dancey type vibes to it. If you listen to the song itself in the beginning, it doesn't sound like a rock song or a metal song. You think, oh, this is a dance song. And then, then the guitars come and you go, okay, I see what they're doing. So with the video clip, we really wanted to capture a live performance in its essence. The same place and with the same lighting, actually, where we shot that was where we shot our live stream. So we did an online show live stream where we went through our entire back catalogue and picked some songs. So what a great opportunity to use the same venue to show what we can do live. Because really, at the end of the day, we're a band, and when we get to Eurovision, I want to make sure that we are not just a perfectly choreographed number from Azerbaijan. We are we're a band, and that's what we do best, and that's what we've done. Why change that?
And what can we expect from you on stage? I don't know how much you can reveal so far, but is the music video a little indication of what we might get to see?
I'd say so, just obviously on a much larger scale, I think. Yeah. We definitely want to make sure that we portray the band vibe, like what we do, what we give on stage. And it doesn't matter if you hate us or you love us, but I want people to say, hey, these guys are having a great time on stage. They're taking the music seriously, possibly not so much themselves, because they're going all out. When I see a band play and they don't get into it, I feel kind of ripped off. I feel that when you see a band, whether you like the genre or not, and they're having the best time of their lives, that's when you know it's a good performance. Because at the end of the day, it's entertainment, and there's a few bands I know who can pull it off with a shoegazy, standing in front of your Marshall amps and doing that. That's cool. That's their genre. That's not what metal, it's not what pop music is about. This is a show, and that's what we're going to bring.
Did you submit the song? Were you approached and then submitted the song, or did you submit the song and then later went through that process?
Yeah, it was a bit of both. It was a bit of both. So we obviously tried to get in 2019. God, my years are all mixed up now. 2019, 2020. 2020. That was the one.
Runaway, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it was Runaway, and that almost made it. And so, believe it or not, we submitted a couple of songs, and I actually wrote a song specifically for Eurovision, using the Eurovision kind of formula by grabbing things from things that I'd seen over the last few decades. And they're like, yeah, that's not bad. What about this one? I'm like, okay, well, fine. Didn't think this one was going to be the one, but I always knew kind of Dreamer had something quite special about it, because it is quite different. So now I can see why that was selected.
Now, let's touch on Eurovision. In the SBS announcement video, you mentioned growing up as a young boy in Germany, and the contest has always been in your lifeblood. And we know you're a long-time fan of the contest. So what does Eurovision mean to you?
It's just the greatest show. Like, it really is. You can forget the World Cup and all that sort of stuff, because this combines so much of what people love. Everyone likes music. If you don't, there's something wrong with you. If you like music, you like entertainment, you like a show, it's all there. Like, and you can get behind it from a competitive point of view. You get into artists' lives, you become their friend for a few weeks, and you wonder what they're doing, and that it's all there. Everything you want in terms of entertainment is there. And then when they changed the voting, like, the voting last year just blew my mind. It was just such a nail biter. I was sitting there, and we'd hired out like a small cinema here to watch it. And I watched it with a 10. We brought a 10-day-old baby along. It was like, you're coming along. It was like, I don't care what time it is. And you just see it, and you're just like, what is this? This is better than any World Cup that I've ever seen. And it's not just because I've been at Eurovision and seen it as a spectator. And it's not because there's a tiny bit of me in the Will Ferrell movie somewhere in the crowd. But objectively, we used to have Eurovision parties for decades before that. And every time you just get into it, and it's clear my schedule. Eurovision's on,
Well, this is probably a hard question to ask. What's your most favorite entry from Eurovision?
Well, I want to, like, I've been doing a couple of interviews and saying stuff like Loreen, Euphoria, and Vegas Duchka and Mons and all that sort of stuff. But and they are my favorites in terms of the all-round performance. I don't think you can fault Euphoria. But I did make a little list before of things that I thought were obscure but interesting. I thought Hungary 2014 with a song called Running. It's like a drum and bass. Running. I thought that was really cool. The other one was Bulgaria, Polygenova, which is probably a little bit less obscure, in, I think, 2016. If love was a crime.
That's a fan favorite. Yep.
And then the Neon Suit, oh man, so good. But I think one of my all-time favorites is, this is going back a while, 2006, Sylvia Knight. Congratulations.
Oh, yeah. That's epic performance.
What is that? And we still sing it. I remember, I was in the share house and friends was watching this going, who's this Sylvia? And everyone was singing, congratulations, I have arrived. Like, who is this person? She did a media show out of it. Like, it's just phenomenal. So do yourself a favor and go check that out if you're not familiar with it. So I think that's sort of delving a bit deeper into Eurovision territory.
I do love that entry. I know the Greeks were booing her from start to finish, and she just kept going. So, yeah, that was a really good entry.
What was the Greek entry?
Oh no, the Greeks were booing Sylvia Knight throughout the performance.
Oh yeah, because it was in Greece that year, right?
Yeah. So she caused a little. Yeah, all these things happened. The audience booed her from start to finish, but she kept going strong, and then all that stuff happened afterwards.
The song was about how she was going to win Eurovision.
Yes, yeah.
So good. So good.
Now, your band was featured in the metal magazine Metal Hammer, and where they talked about Måneskin's influence on metal and rock at Eurovision, and you were listed as one of the bands to watch out for during the Eurovision national final season to potentially make it to Eurovision and get progressive metal out there. How important is it to get progressive metal out into the mainstream?
Super important. But what's interesting is that it's kind of already out there. Metal is so broad that I think if we can say getting heavy music to be accepted more in the mainstream, I think is, and I guess more sort of obscure heavy music, because Metallica's in the mainstream, there's heavier bands like Muse, for example, are also in the mainstream. There's like Disturbed and Korn, and that's heavy music. But I think some of the sort of more obscure musical genres that are defined as metal, I think bringing them into Eurovision is really exciting for the scene, and it demystifies, I think, what the metal scene is, because it doesn't have to be this scary Cookie Monster thing, which I know and love very much, but that's not necessarily what it's about. It's not if you listen to Voyager, it's not a gateway drug to like Cannibal Corpse. It's not. But even if you get into Cannibal Corpse, who cares? Like, I think demystifying metal is going to be really healthy. And I know a lot of purists will say metal has no place in Eurovision, but it does, because you like it or not, metal is drama. Whether it's black metal and you're in the Norwegian forest doing this stuff, or you're like, you're windmilling like a maniac to death metal, that's entertainment and that's drama. You're not sitting there, doing nothing. It's not an acoustic folk kind of concert. So I think it fits into Eurovision really well. And Lordi's shown that. There's so many bands over the years that have shown that metal has a firm place in Eurovision. And that's really exciting for a band like Voyager, because we've got that pop element as well. So you put the pop at the top and the metal and you jam them together and you've got Eurovision. Perfect.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you're the first Perth act to actually compete Australia Decides, and you have performed for Eurovision fans at Euroclub Perth before as well. So how I think you have. How important is it to get
performed in one way or the other?
Oh, okay. How important is it to get that WA representation on a big stage like Australia Decides on national television?
Super important, because WA has actually done a lot, I think, for Australian music. We've got a lot of quality bands that have come out from WA, and in fact, a lot of quality heavy bands. I mean, people forget, Birds of Tokyo from here, Carnival, bands like that, Gyroscope. There's a whole bunch of really, really good bands which have not only gone on to be on a national scale, but also internationally. And I think what's really important for us is to put WA as a sort of really weird, insular, kind of isolated music scene on the map as well. We've had great success overseas. We've had great success in the States and in Europe and in Asia, etc. And Australia has been really good to us as well. It's a bit difficult to tour in Australia because there's a lot of flying involved and things like that, and it's a lot more expensive, in fact, as well. But for a Perth band to be represented, it actually does mean a lot, because, not naming any names, but I was speaking to a person from, as we say, the East Coast, and they're like, I was asking them, what do you think about WA when you think about WA? And the person was like, we don't really think about WA. I was like, what? So we're going to change that.
Yep. What other projects are Voyager working on at the moment? What can we expect from you during the year?
We are working on album number 8, believe it or not. So that's in progress at the moment. And you might have seen on the socials just a few snippets and clips and stuff of us in the studio. Dreamer will be on that album, obviously, and we're super excited. We've had to really rework how we write songs, and because of lockdown, because of not being able to sort of jam together as much as we can, a lot of studio writing, which has been really fun. And one of the reasons that it's different this time is because of Eurovision. Now, the way we approached writing Dreamer was kind of shaped the rest of the songs. We had a bunch of songs written, and then we're like, let's revisit this with like Eurovision eyes.
Yep.
And not every song on there, of course, is going to be suitable for Eurovision, but you kind of think, does it have that vibe? Does it have what it takes? If I played it to the producers of Eurovision, would they be like, yeah, or they'll be like, oh yeah, this is something. That's what you're striving towards. So whatever the purists might say about Eurovision, it requires a lot of thought into songwriting, and that, I think, that can't be understated, and that's really, really hard. If you can write a good Eurovision song, you're onto something.
And lastly, if you got the opportunity to go to Turin for Eurovision 2022, but you can only take 3 items with you, Danny, what would you take with you?
1, 2, and 3.
What's that?
Oh, what is that? That is a melodica.
Oh, right.
You can play some beautiful folk numbers on this.
Yep.
That sort of stuff.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. I actually have used it on stage once before.
Oh, yep.
You can have this hose, or you can just blow into it like this if you like. But it's a neat little thing without which I don't travel anywhere.
So you'd be all
handy.
Yep.
It's really handy when you're writing music and you're like, is that an A? Is that it's a yeah, it's an A. That's cool.
Should be all set with all your instruments at Eurovision then.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I'm kidding. I probably just need one piano type instrument.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what I'd take. A punnet of raspberries.
Yep.
And a bottle of rum.
Sounds good. Great combination. Well, we cannot wait for your song release tomorrow, and we can't wait to see what you have planned for Australia Decides 2022 in the Gold Coast. And all the best, and thank you very much for speaking to Aussievision today.